My husband smiled, picked up his keys, and walked out without saying a single word. I thought it was just another argument. I had no idea I was watching him leave forever until I noticed what he had quietly left waiting on the table. When Emily stepped through the front door that Sunday evening with her suitcase in hand, she wore the unmistakable glow of someone returning from vacation. Her hair was tousled by the wind, her skin kissed by the sun, and her smile seemed just a little too bright to feel genuine. She wrapped her arms around me and kissed my cheek as if everything between us was completely fine. God, it feels so good to be home, she said with a laugh as she placed her bags on the floor. I smiled back with the kind of polite, practiced smile you wear when you already know the truth but are simply waiting for the liar to bury themselves. How was the girls' trip? I asked. Oh, it was amazing, she answered far too quickly. We went hiking, tasted wine, just did a bunch of girl stuff. I nodded. Sounds like fun. Then I leaned against the counter and quietly asked, So did you and Mike enjoy yourselves too? Her smile disappeared instantly. That brief flash of panic in her eyes confirmed every suspicion I'd been carrying for weeks. She struggled to recover, stammering, Mike? Who's Mike? But the shake in her voice exposed the truth before she could hide it. I stayed silent for a moment. I simply watched her unravel, watched her trembling hands fumble with the zipper of her suitcase, as though that small distraction could somehow hide the guilt pouring off her. You know, I said slowly, Mike, the one you called 3 times last night at exactly 1:14 a.m. while your phone's GPS placed you at a beach resort 2 hours away from where your friends were staying. Her lip quivered. You went through my phone? I smiled once more. No, Emily, you went through my trust. She slowly dropped into the chair, her eyes wide and her breathing uneven. It's not what you think, she whispered. The oldest excuse in the book, the line every cheater seems ready to deliver. Then tell me what it really is, I replied calmly, my voice steady and almost painfully quiet, because right now it looked like my wife had gone on a girls' trip that included one man, and it wasn't me. She covered her face with both hands and began to cry, but I'd seen those tears before, tears that only appear after the lies stop working. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply finished. The truth spilled out little by little. Mike was an old coworker she had recently reconnected with. One drink became dinner, and dinner became what she called a weekend mistake. I listened without interrupting. Every sentence landed like another nail sealing the coffin of our marriage. When she finally fell silent, I asked only one question. Was it worth it? She looked up at me, mascara running down her face, barely able to whisper. I simply nodded. Good, I said, because it cost you everything. I stood and walked toward the hallway. The bags I had packed days earlier were already waiting beside the front door. She stared at them in shock, as though she never imagined I would be the one leaving. Where are you going? She asked, her voice cracking. Somewhere you can't follow, I answered quietly. I've already signed the papers. They're on the table. Her jaw dropped. You filed for divorce? I nodded. The day after you left? I wanted to believe I was wrong, but I wasn't. She rushed toward me, grabbing my arm as she begged, It didn't mean anything, I swear. It was just one mistake. Her desperation filled every corner of the room, but it had come far too late. I gently pulled my arm away. You don't accidentally betray someone who would have given you the world, I told her. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. Her sobs echoed throughout the house we had once built together. I never raised my voice. I never slammed the door. I simply picked up my bags and walked away, leaving her surrounded by the wreckage of the decisions she had made. During the weeks that followed, she called, texted, and even appeared outside my office. I never answered. Every message carried the same desperate words. Please, I'm sorry, but apologies can never erase betrayal. I had spent years believing loyalty came naturally with love. I eventually learned it doesn't. Loyalty is a choice. She chose to throw ours away for a weekend thrill with a man who disappeared the moment real life caught up with them. Months later, a mutual friend told me Mike had moved to another state. Apparently, he admitted he wasn't looking for anything serious. The irony stung deeply. She had destroyed a marriage for someone who never planned to stay. By then, I had settled into a small apartment overlooking the city. It wasn't luxurious, but it brought me peace. There were no lies, no pretending, only quiet. One afternoon, she sent a long email filled with regret, pleading for one more chance. I read every word before quietly closing it without responding. At the very end, she had written, "You were right. You were the only person who ever truly loved me." Maybe I was, but love without respect becomes nothing more than punishment, and I had already endured enough. Now, whenever I think back to that moment, watching her walk through the door smiling after her girls' trip, I realize my calm question, "Did you and Mike have fun?" wasn't spoken from anger. It was the moment I found closure. I didn't need to shout or prove anything. She had already lost the one thing that mattered most, my trust. And once trust dies, everything else dies with it.